how they help us to remember some of the great truths and promises from the Bible, and how God uses them to speak to us and encourage us through difficult times. And so I thought it would be a nice idea, rather than to just look at my favourite songs, actually to look at some of your favourite songs. And my first guinea pig is Janet. So Janet, what song have you chosen?
I have chosen How Great Thou Art, O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder.
That's quite a popular choice. That's a good choice. We like that choice. So is there a particular line or phrase or verse that speaks to you?
Well, all of it really, but especially in the first verse, it's the line that says, thy power throughout the universe displayed. And yeah, it's just that sort of sense that, God's power is just throughout the universe, and it's not just creation. No, it's in people,
everything,
absolutely everything.
Excellent. So why is it special to you? We all agree it's a fantastic song, but what is it that gives it special meaning to you?
Gosh, loads of different things. It's a hymn. It's a hymn that I've grown up with. Some of you have heard me talk about my grandmother and how influential she was in our family, and it's a song that she always used to sing in her generation. George Beverly Shea. That was very, his version of the song. That was very, very prominent. Every church I've been in, that song has been sung. It doesn't matter where I've been, that song is sung. It's so universal. But when June sent the email out asking us, what's our favourite song, I was in Russia at the time, and ever since I'd learnt Russian at school, I've been fascinated with Russia. And this year, my kids took me to Russia, in part of my bucket list. They took me to Russia, and I was there when this email came through. And this song, I've always thought of it as being a Russian song, because when it was made into a hymn, it came originally from a poem, I believe, but when it was made into I'm not going to say too much, but the hymn, it was Russia. I won't say any more. I'm not giving any detail with that. But I think because growing up, as I say, Russia being such the USSR as it was so prominent, and all the Cold War, and the fact it was a communist country. And what really appealed to me as a teenager was this sense that even though this country who was preaching and saying there was no God, God did not exist, that out of that country came this amazing hymn, which was actually speaking such truths about God and his power. And so that I think has made it more special to me because of that Russian link with that. But I love the sea. Cornwall especially, I could sit for hours just looking at the sea. And I always, whenever I'm looking at the sea, I just think of God's power and his majesty. And I find myself singing the song. It's just one that just automatically comes to me, because I think I see the sea as really representative of his power. And, it's always there, never ending. But I will, if I can, just share one experience, sorry. One of the most amazing experiences that I have had with this song, years ago when we lived in London, I went on a mission trip to Latvia. And it was just after the USSR was beginning to break up. It was just after Latvia had got their independence. And there were people from all different nationalities there. There was sort of some from our London church, and there were people from a church in America, but there were different nationalities amongst us who were there. And the church we were working with, the music minister, as he was called, I feel really sad I can't remember his name. I think it was Piotr, but I'm not sure, Peter. But he had been sent to Siberia because of his faith. He'd experienced being taken to Siberia and things. And on one day, he was taking us around, and he took us to this building, which was a bit run down. And he took us inside, and it was the building which the Secret Service had when they were there, and where he'd been taken and had been, obviously, he'd been questioned, he'd been tortured, and everything there. And we were in this room, and it used to be like a ballroom. And you could see, even though it was falling down, you could see a beauty there. It would have been an amazing building. And in the corner was a baby grand piano. And he went and he sat down, and this piano, either he was an amazing pianist, but the piano was in tune. And he started to play this song. And so, there was the whole group, it was all the team were there, and suddenly everybody was started to sing this song. But I was hearing it in Russian, I was hearing it in Latvian, I was hearing it in American English, I was hearing it in English, I was hearing it in Greek, and I was hearing it in French. And it was just incredible, and it just really felt as if, God's power was there, was present, and it was almost as if God was saying, I'm claiming this back. This has been used by, and this building has been used, this country has been, has been under, Russia's hold, and I'm releasing it, I'm taking it back, this is mine. And there was just a real sense of God's power, and that memory has always, always stayed with me with this song. And that's one of the main reasons that I love it.
Is that it? Thank you, Janet. It'll be nothing like how you pronounce it. If there's any people with Swedish heritage, I do apologise already. But he wrote a poem called O Stora Gud, which means O Great God. And then that poem was set to a Swedish folk tune. It was translated into German and then into Russian. And that's when it started to become a popular hymn. Fast forward 45 years or so to 1931, and a man called Stuart K. Hine was a Methodist missionary out in the Ukraine. And Hine heard the Russian version of the song, and he loved it so much that he paraphrased it into English. And thus we have the first two verses. The first two verses are lifted directly from the Swedish poem. And then Hine wrote verse 3 himself, and the song originally had just 3 verses. It was after the end of the Second World War when Hine wrote verse 4. And he wrote those wonderful words, when Christ shall come with shout of acclamation to take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. There shall I bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. And he said that he wrote this 4th verse, he just needed to express these words as a message of hope, that we have a hope amidst all of the rubble, amidst the devastation, amidst the loss, we have a hope. But sadly, though, the song remained in obscurity. No one picked it up, it wasn't really sung for around 10 years, until Billy Graham did a crusade to New York in 1957. And it was then that he invited George Beverly Shea to sing with the choir. And George Beverly Shea said, I want to sing this hymn. I want to sing this hymn. It immediately became a favourite. And it was so popular, it was sang over 100 times on that rally alone. So if you ever think we sing a song to death, just think on. But more recently, How Great Thou Art was voted the nation's second favourite hymn of all time, second only to Amazing Grace. So we're going to listen to George Beverly Shea in 1957 singing How Great Thou Art. I know we have some teachers in the room. And in honour of you teachers, I'm going to do something a bit different. Teachers nowadays, before they even start to teach anything, they have to tell the children what they're going to learn. Quite often when you come and hear me preach, you might hear me open up a passage to you. It's because I want you to get some theological idea. Or maybe I want you to get a new insight into God. Maybe I want you to see something a bit differently or to understand something a bit differently. Today, the point of the lesson, is that the object point? The object of the lesson is that you will leave this place with a sense of wonder and awe. That you will go outside and you will go, wow, how great thou art. I remember many years ago now, felt like how to feel like a terrible parent. Sam was probably about 7, and we'd taken him for his eye test. And he'd gone into the optician. The optician had looked in his eyes and Said to him, read the letters. And he said, I can't see any letters. Because I'm like that, I can't see any letters with my glasses off. They say, pull the other one. I'm like, really, I can't see any letters. And I didn't realise his eyes were that bad. Knew they were getting somewhere, but didn't realise they were that bad. Crumbs. So we bought him glasses. He had glasses, and the first time he went back and they fitted him with these glasses, and he walked out of the opticians, there was a tree there, and he stopped and he went, wow, because he could see the tree. That's what I want you to do today, okay? That's the object. I want you to go out of those doors and I want you to go, wow, how great thou art. Okay? Is everybody on the same page? Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, first words in our Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day. And God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to their kinds. And it was so. And God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all of the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I will give every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that wonderful? God saw that it was very good. I'm currently, for my own personal devotions, I'm working my way through a book by a man called Brian McLaren. Brian McLaren is part of the Emerging Church Network. If you are a mature Christian, it is something I recommend to you. If you're quite new to the faith, I'd leave it alone for a bit. I spend more of my time arguing with this book, but actually that's great. That's really good because it challenges me and strengthens me. But this book is called We Make the Road by Walking, and I use it for my daily devotions. And one bit I loved, when it was talking about the glory of creation, Brian McLaren says this. He says, Big bangs aren't boring. Dinosaurs aren't boring. Coral reefs aren't boring. Elephants aren't boring. Hummingbirds aren't boring, and neither are little children. Evolution isn't boring. Magnetism and electricity aren't boring. E equals mc squared might be hard to understand, but it certainly isn't boring. And even glaciers aren't boring, although their dramatic pace is at first quite hard for us to perceive. And so God, whoever or whatever God is, must not be boring either, because God's creation is so amazingly, wonderfully, surprisingly fascinating. And that, for me, just encapsulated everything that the hymn writer was celebrating in this wonderful classic hymn that Janet has chosen for us this morning. The greatness, the awesomeness, the astoundingness of our created world and universe, and the everythingness. I'm making words up now to try and encapsulate all that God is, through which we see God revealed. So as we look around us, we see God's creativity. We get a sense of his beauty, of his love. We see his delicate touch, and then we see his awesome power. Thy power throughout the universe displayed. There's a wonderful, wonderful line in the creation poetry that we just read together this morning. It was there in verse 16. It's just a throwaway line. Did you pick it up as I read it? He also made the stars. I love that. It's like it was no bother. You know, he made the sun, he made the moon. They were the bits that took the time. He also made the stars. And that line makes me almost giggle every time I read it, because the thing is, we have no idea how many stars there even are out there. Every day we discover more and more and more things as we explore deeper into space. I read somewhere this week, it was fatal this week, I got so sidetracked looking all this stuff up. There's a square, pinhead, I don't know, but there's a square in space, and it looked like it had nothing in it, nothing, absolute black, surrounded by stars. So they aimed the telescope into this nothing to see if there really was nothing, and they've discovered so much more in this nothing. They've discovered so many more millions of stars, it's blown their mind. They just thought, we'll have a look at this nothing, see if it really is nothing. Incredible. Let me give you a little bit of an idea of how awesome our God is through what we are beginning to know about his creation. Those of you with a bit of a penchant for science and numbers, this is your bit. The rest of you, I'll be back with you shortly. So, astronomers estimate that there are between 100 billion and 200 billion galaxies. A little bit of wiggle room there. 100 billion galaxies in the universe, there are between 100 billion and 200 billion galaxies in the universe. They estimate that there may be as many as 1,000,000,000,000,000,000 stars in the universe. That is 10 raised to the power of 24 for people who count things that way. For the rest of us, that's big. Very big. The diameter of the universe, diameter is if we cross from one side to the other straight through the middle, yeah? That's diameter, yeah? Okay, so why do they not just say the size from one side to the other, crossing straight through the middle of the universe, is believed to be 93 billion light years across. That is, for you mathematicians, 500,000 million miles. For the rest of us, that's big. It's very big. God made it. It says he made the stars. Wow. But the first miracle really, or for me, the first miracle just blows my mind, is that anything exists at all. Have you heard of something called the Goldilocks principle? No? You've not heard of the Goldilocks principle. You've all heard of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, yeah? The story of Goldilocks. Have you heard of the Goldilocks principle, Jackie? You're not. Steve has. See, I'm not making it up. Steve's heard of it. You're my mate, Steve. That's good. The Goldilocks principle, basically the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, where Goldilocks is wandering through the woods. She finds the Three Bears' house and she tries the porridge, doesn't she? One's too hot and one's too cold and one's just right. Well, this earth, this wonderful, beautiful, incredible planet that we live on is actually called a Goldilocks planet. Because if we were any closer to the sun or any further away, the planet would either be too hot or too cold to sustain life. But actually, it's just right. Though actually, to be fair, it is a little bit too hot right now. Our God made it just right. And I mean, I'm really oversimplifying this. There are a million factors that fall into the Goldilocks principle. There's just the right amount of water, there's just the right amount of ozone, there's just the right amount of this, there's just the right amount of that. So to just say that it's to do with temperature is really oversimplifying it. But you get the idea. This planet that sustains our life has been created to be just right. Wow. And can you imagine, right back at the beginning, we can't imagine, we can try and imagine, right back at the beginning, when space and time and matter and gravity and energy and light just burst or boomed or banged into being. And the Genesis story helps us to make sense of this, that as the universe exploded into being, that God, the creative spirit, spoke those wonderful words, "Let there be." And there was. There was light, there was time, there was space and matter and sea and trees and fishes and birds, and there was you and there was me. Enjoying the gift of our Creator. Enjoying being alive, enjoying being here. Doesn't that make you want to sing, "How great thou art"? Just me then, right. Oh dear, you're a hard audience. Is nobody even vaguely excited by this stuff? I'm having to tie myself down by the ankles to stop myself floating off up there somewhere. And you're all going, "Oh, that's quite interesting." I'm not very well travelled at all. I'm really not. There are very few places that I've been. But a few years ago, I travelled with a friend to Norway in 2011. I have masses of photographs to bore you to death with, if ever you want to have a look. But up until that day, I had never even seen a mountain, let alone stood on one. On the 1st of June 2011, I stood on top of Mount Dalsnibba in Norway. And as I looked around, tears, uncontrollable tears, poured from God's creation. It's a feeling that has never ever left me. The other people on the coach trip must have thought I was off my rocker. Turn to your neighbour. Tell your neighbour the most beautiful place in the world that you have ever seen. Just briefly. I was there 2 years ago. Yeah. Are you sharing stories of how awesome our God's creation is? The most beautiful place in the world ever. I wonder if for any of you, the most beautiful place you've ever seen is also the most embarrassing place you've ever been to. A friend of mine, I've got 2 stories to tell you. I'll have to tell you both because they're hilarious, but a friend of mine tells the story of when she was about 9 years old. Her granddad took her on holiday to Switzerland, and as they got out of the coach and saw the amazing scenery, he burst into song, and he had a big booming voice, and he started to sing, "Then sings my soul, my Saviour God to thee." She said, "I've never prayed so hard for Jesus to come back." Another 2 dear friends of mine, Cedric and Ethel, I can tell you this story. They're neither of them no longer with us. They are just the most wonderful people. Cedric and Ethel, they went on holiday to the mountains somewhere. And Cedric just looked round and he was so overwhelmed. And Ethel said, "Oh, I'm just nipping to the loo." And off she went to the loo and she came back and she stood next to him. And she turned to him to say something and he thought she was going to say, "Isn't this awesome?" And she went, "The toilets are very nice." How can we sang it earlier, how can we look around us? How can we see God's awesome creation and say there is no God? You know, it was when my Sam was born, my eldest son, and I held him in my arms and I said, there must be a God. There must be a God, because I couldn't have done this on my own. How can we look at the awesome creation and say there is no God? It always baffles and astounds me. I mean, the psalmist says in Psalm 19, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands." I mean, to me, it's almost as ridiculous as coming across one of Jackie's amazing paintings and going, "What an astounding painting. What an awesome painting. I'm going to worship this painting. Jackie, I'm not sure you exist, but I'm going to worship." I mean, how ridiculous is it? We see this awesome creation of our God. How can we say there is no God? Psalm 104, verse 24 and 25 says, "How many are your works, Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. There is the sea, vast and spacious, teeming with creatures beyond number, living things both large and small. How many are your works, Lord?" But even in the so-called ordinary things of life, we see God's hand. We see the Creator's brushstrokes. What's your favourite colour? Just think for a minute, what's your favourite colour? And now just think how many shades of that colour there are. Because if I'd created, red would be red and blue would be blue, and that would be as simple as that. You know, what's your favourite flower? Bring to mind your favourite flower. And now just think of the petals, the leaves, the buds, the perfume. And then, as Janet says, there's the crash of a wave on a beach. There's the beauty of a sunset that paints the skies red and orange and pink. The same God that made the eagle to soar, made the little ladybird and the duck-billed platypus. There was a song I used to love. I used to sing it at my old church quite a lot. I don't know if you know it at all. It's by Graham Kendrick. And you can't go wrong with a bit of Graham Kendrick, can you? And it says, when I see the beauty of a sunset's glory, amazing artistry across the evening sky, when I feel the mystery of a distant galaxy, it awes and humbles me to be loved by a God most high. And then the chorus says, so what can I do but praise you? What can I do but give my life to you? Hallelujah, hallelujah. What can I do but thank you? Every day make everything I do a hallelujah. And that's kind of where I want to draw us to this morning. That we would stop and that we would lift our eyes, that we would smell the flowers and that we would give praise to the one who created them, that we would look into the night sky and stand in awe of the one who also created the stars, that we would stand on a beach and hear the waves crash, or stand in a storm and hear the thunder rumble and see the lightning flash and get a glimpse of the awesome power of the might and the majesty of our Creator God. You've shared with each other that most beautiful place that you've ever been to. Hold that place in your head now, because I've got a question for you. If that place was your only Bible, if that place was your only revelation of God, what would it tell you about our God? And as you think about that just for a second, about how God reveals himself in the big and the small, in the mighty and in the tiny, I've got a video clip for us to watch which explores some of the awesomeness of creation. I just love it. And it's from a song called Creation Calls by Brian Dirksen, and it is wonderful. So have a look at this.